So this lesson deals with Dayan practice, or practice on the small side of mridanga. So here's some combinations that are commonly used on this side that you should practice individually on this side of mridanga. So the first mantra is ta ti ta ti ta ti ta ti. Ta ti ta ti ta ti ta ti. So remember, ta is open and ti is 3 fingers. Ta ti ta ti ta ti ta ti. So ta is kind of down and ti is up, down, up. It's not that emphasized, but that's just the idea of the wrist movement. So ta ti ta ti ta ti ta ti ta ti ta ti ta ti. So moving on. So the next sound is double that. It's ta ta ti ta ta ti ta ta ti ta ta ti. Ta ta ti ta ta ti ta ta ti ta ta ti. Now this one you want to really practice with this particular one, with all of them ultimately, but this one you use a lot, and it could go pretty fast too. Ta ta ti ta ta ti ta ta ti ta ta ti. For example, I'll use it in a combination mode right now. So you use ta ta ti a lot. So the next sound is triple. It's ta 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 ti ta 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 ti ta 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 ti. Ta 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 ti ta 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 ti ta 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 ti ta 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 ti. Ta 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 ti ta 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 ti ta 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 ti. And you use it, you can use it a lot. So it's a good to practice one. Like for example, ta 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 ti ta ta ta. So you use that. So ta 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 ti ta 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 ti. So that was the third mantra. Now the fourth mantra is ta ta tin ta ta tin ta ta tin. Now remember, tin is this sound on the edge, sometimes called knot. Here's tin. And to get 10, remember the technique's a little different. It's not necessarily you bend your middle finger and kind of have that support. So it's kind of like ta ta 10, ta 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 10, then bring it up for support. Now, generally speaking, at least personally, I don't use this one a lot, like for fast rhythms, but it can be used in slow rhythms, like for example, ta ta 10, ta ta 10, ta 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 10, ta ta 10. So ta ta 10. So that was the fourth mantra. Now here's the fifth. It's ta 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 10 ta 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 10, triple time. So ta 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 10 ta 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 10. So the same technique applies. You bend your middle finger and have it as support on the edge of the mridanga. tin ta ta ta, tin ta ta ta, tin ta ta ta, tin ta ta ta, tin. Ta ta ta, tin. So that was the fifth one, I believe. So the sixth one is okay. Here's the next one. It starts off with ta, and it goes like this: ta, tin ta ta, tin ta ta, tin ta ta. So it starts off with ta, ta, tin ta ta, tin ta ta, tin ta ta, ta, tin ta ta. Tin ta ta, 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 tin ta. Ta, tin ta ta, tin ta ta, tin ta ta, tin ta ta. And you will use it in mantras like this. So you use that a lot. So ta, tin ta ta, tin ta ta. So that was that mantra. So the next one is ta, ti, ta, ti, rati, rati, ta, ta. Then it starts all over again. Ta, ti, ta, ti, ta, ti, ta, ti, rati, rati, ta. So rati, rati. Remember, rati, rati. Those are closed sounds. And ta is the open. Ta, ti, ta, ti. Rati, 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 ta, ta, ti, ta, ti, rati, rati, ta, ta, ti, ta, ti, rati, rati, ta, ta. Now, rati, rati, that has to be clear. That's imperative because you use these motions a lot, and although they're difficult, they're imperative. They may seem pointless, but they're imperative to keep the rhythm. And you have to do them well for the mridanga to sound good. So these closed sounds are very important. Ra, ra, ti, ta. So ta, ti, ta, ti, ra, ti, ta, ta, ti, ta, ti. Ta, ti, ra, ti, ta, ta, ti, ta, ti, ra, ti, ta, ta, ti, ta, ti, ra, ti, ta, ta. Ti, ta, ti, rati, rati, ta, ta, ti. So now the last one, hand practice. I'll put these mantras in the description, of course. So now the last one is ta, rati, rati, ta, ta. Ta, rati, rati, ta, ta. The reason it goes that fast, and rati, rati, use rati, rati again, but this one is speeded a little faster because in a lot of mantras you speed it up. So here's a good practice one. Ta, rati, rati, ta, ta. 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 So those are all the primary hand Dayan bowls to practice with, and you use them very frequently in the mridanga. So those are good ones to practice. So it's very important to practice, and especially the closed sounds like ratsi ratsi, and so on. So hopefully they'll help, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare. Hare Krishna,